It was Super Bowl weekend in 1993 when Amarillo, Texas lawyer David Lewis mysteriously vanished, leaving behind his wife, daughter, and entire life with hardly a trace. Over 11 years would pass before the baffling events of that January would finally intertwine with the death of an unidentified man 1,700 miles away. This is the perplexing story of David's inexplicable disappearance and the lingering questions that persist decades later. January 31, Est 1993, started like any other day leading up to the big game. David's wife Karen and daughter Lauren embarked on a weekend shopping trip to Dallas, where Super Bowl festivities were underway. David stayed behind in Amarillo for reasons that remain unclear. Some speculate that he wanted to record the game on VHS, since their recorder lacked an auto-start function. Others, like Karen, have suggested work obligations kept him home since he was a busy lawyer. When Karen and Lauren returned late Sunday evening, David was gone. His car had vanished from the driveway, yet nothing else seemed amiss. Plain laundry sat in the dryer, his wedding ring and watch lay neatly on the counter, and 2 freshly made turkey sandwiches waited in the fridge. The VCR even continued recording long after the game had ended. With no signs of a struggle, Karen assumed David was working late and would return soon. But as hours stretched into days, it became clear something was very wrong. With her husband now officially considered missing, Karen aided investigators in piecing together David's peculiar behavior leading up to his disappearance. In one concerning account, she revealed that weeks prior, David had ominously warned he believed he was in danger, but wouldn't explain further. This led some to speculate his vanishing might be linked to his work as a lawyer. David had been aggressively pursuing a lawsuit against his former firm over alleged misdeeds. In fact, he was scheduled to fly to Dallas just a week later to testify against them. Then came a major break in the case. David's abandoned Ford SUV was discovered outside a courthouse just 10 miles from the Amarillo airport. Inside, his credit cards, ID, and personal items were still in the glove box items Karen said he always carried with him. Even more puzzling were the plane tickets found booked in David's name, one from Dallas to Amarillo on January 31 St. and another from Los Angeles to Dallas on February 1 St. This positioned David at 2 different airports on each of those days. It seemed he had pre-purchased return flights while away, suggesting he did intend to come back. But why fly to these cities using his real name while leaving behind anything that could identify him at home? Some speculate that in his rush to escape whatever threat he perceived, flying under the radar wasn't his chief concern. But the question remained, escape to where? And why? A few eyewitness accounts form an enigmatic timeline of David's activities. On January 28, he abruptly left work at noon, claiming illness. The next day, he was seen urgently rushing through the Amarillo airport ticket counter, empty-handed. On January 30, a questionable $5,000 was deposited into David's bank account, a large sum for someone not known to be wealthy. The following morning, his car appeared in the courthouse parking lot as David was snapped photographing it. Then there's the odd specifics around the Super Bowl. If David stayed behind to record the game, why drop off his car at the courthouse that morning? The average game is over 3 hours long, while most VHS tapes only capture 4. This left little wiggle room for David to return home and settle in before kickoff. Of course, if the VCR did have auto-record capabilities, this point would be moot. But with so many baffling behaviors at play, it's hard to dismiss any inconsistency. On February 1 Est, a Dallas cab driver recalled picking up a nervous passenger matching David's description from a hotel and driving him to the airport. He paid cash from a large wad of $100 bills. Thus begins the trail going cold. We can ascertain David likely used cash to avoid detection when fleeing Amarillo. But how and why did he end up clear across the country? This is where the tragic events in Washington state come into play. On that very same February 1 night, a motorist spotted a man walking along Highway 24 in Yakima, Washington. He wore military-style clothing and boots nothing like David's typical polished lawyer attire. Concerned about his safety, they turned around to check on him, only to find his body lifeless along the road. Nearby skid marks and sightings of a fleeing Chevy Camaro pointed to a hit and run. With no identification of the man, he was simply classified as a John Doe. Over a decade passed before a detective working cold cases recognized a striking similarity between the unidentified Washington man and the missing Amarillo lawyer. The only discrepancy was the lack of glasses found on John Doe, while David was known for wearing spectacles. But a later review of evidence revealed glasses were indeed recovered at the scene. In 2004, over 11 years after that tragic night, dental records officially confirmed that John Doe was David Lewis. In an instant, the disappearances across 2 states clicked into place. Yet glaring questions still remain. Why did a successful Texas attorney end up dead 1,700 miles away? What kind of danger was he running from? If he had cash for flights and taxes, why walk a desolate highway at night? Unfortunately, the only person who knows the real story is David himself. His motivations, his plans, and his demise remain shrouded in mystery. Some posit his vanishing was spurred by threats from his high-profile lawsuit. Others believe David suffered a mental breakdown, but any explanation is mere speculation. The inconsistent timeline, his paranoid behavior, and his presence in a random town across the country all point to parts of David's story we may never unravel. Even the most trivial details, like confirming if his VCR could record on its own, went unanswered in the investigation. Nearly 30 years later, the vanishing of David Lewis stands as a perplexing cold case. His strange actions in those final days defy simple explanations. Ultimately, the circumstances surrounding how and why an upstanding Texas family man came to perish one fateful night along a highway in Washington may forever remain an impenetrable mystery.